Hello and welcome to the Power Pod. I'm your host, Matthew Cohen, and today I have the pleasure of welcoming back Renaldo Gouws onto the show. Renaldo, how have you been? Good to have you back.
I'm doing great, Matthew. Thanks for having me. And it's great to just have a lacquer conversation about what's going on in South Africa.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. I mean, it's been so long since our last chat on this channel. I know obviously
Mm.
I've come on with you a couple of times, but yeah, I think it would be great for us to get into some stuff because what's really interesting to me right now is that obviously since you've been involved in the Freedom Front Plus, a lot has gone on with that party. But then we've also seen how the DA has just been hitting the headlines constantly, John Steenhuisen, and not for the right reasons. So it kind of almost feels like your entry into the Freedom Front Plus was like the perfect timing, you know?
Yeah. Looking back at it now, you can almost like see it as like a intervention almost. I don't know. I am a believer in Christ, and it's like you can almost say it's like a holy intervention. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
to a large extent, what is happening here is, and I don't find any joy in it because it's very sad to see that the once strong DA that was the official opposition of this country, and they did a phenomenal job at being that opposition and holding the ANC to account, has now just become a jaarbroer for the ANC and the GNU. And there are many people out there that will say, but Ronaldo, the Freedom Front Plus is also in the GNU. And you are 100% correct. But the Freedom Front Plus they were never the official opposition. So you can immediately feel that loss a lot more. And then also, secondly, the Freedom Front Plus is actually, they have a minister in a position where they are seeing massive change. I believe that Dr. Pieter Groenewald has had a 100% response rate to all questions in Parliament, which is what a lot of other ministers can't show. And you can see an
Yeah.
improvement in the correctional services. I mean, how many cell phones have been confiscated? They've put jammers at the police, at the prison cells and in jail, so that the people that are in prison can't have a cell phone and communicate. So you can just see that there's a massive difference between what people are looking for and what they are, kind of the support that the Freedom Front Plus is enjoying at the moment. And just to bring it back, because a lot of people, whenever I speak about the DA, they go, well, you're a bitter ex, you also, why did you not speak out against these things when you were in the party? But I think it's clear to see for everybody that most of the issues has come out after the 2024 elections. So it's a blessing
Yes.
that they terminated my membership, but it's also, for people that don't really understand politics or they're not really clued up with what is happening, they would just say, oh, you're an opportunist. And now you're trying to ride the wave. So it's good in the one sense that I've been vindicated for people that know, but for those that don't know, the timing also looks terrible. Where it's because so many politicians
Right.
jump from one bandwagon to the next. And I mean, what people tend to forget is that I took a whole year to review different political parties and to consider where I was going to join. And ultimately, it was the
Sure.
Freedom Front Plus. So,
Right. No, of course. And also, like, just expanding on that fact, it's not like you somebody that's hopped between parties like certain others. You were in the DA for what, 12 years, 13 years?
12 years, yeah.
So, yeah, so 12 years. So you gave them, ample time. You were invested. It's not like it was a quick thing. And yeah, it's just what you said earlier really resonated with me. So for those who might be worried, I was not laughing at you saying it's Christ intervention. I mean, I'm also a believer in God, albeit
Mm,
Jewish, but I was laughing also because I totally understand what you mean. Like
mm,
sometimes as you go through life, you think to yourself, "Ah, why did something happen?" But then the minute that you allow time to pass and you eventually reflect back months later, sometimes even years later, you see how
mm.
everything just led you to this moment and everything happened the way it's supposed to. It's all kind of part of God's plan. And it's very interesting to me to see how we've seen the performance of Dr. Pieter Groenewald in the GNU. and how there also seems to be like so many people on X these days who are praising him, and especially like black voters. And so, yeah, it just shows you how there's a sort of change, because you would have never in the past expected that. You know, there was always that weird connotation going around like, oh, the Freedom Front Plus is this white party, or, oh, they're going to bring back apartheid, you know, all that sort of rhetoric, which is false. But the people just couldn't help themselves. But I mean, beyond even that, Ronaldo, what really interests me is that we're not just seeing people talk on social media, right? We're also seeing this happen on the ground as people vote, because I'm pretty sure most people know by now, but there was a by-election in Tshwane, when was it? A week ago, 2 weeks ago, Ward 57. And Freedom Front voters in Pretoria really like showed up in numbers. I actually put down the numbers here, and this is what's really amazing, right? So Freedom Front Plus grew from 7.8% in 2024 in this ward to 44.38%, which is a rise in votes from 806 to 1,359. Now, the DA obviously will say, oh, we still won the ward because we got 53.2 and we only fell from 57.2%. So it's not a lot. But now here's the important part. If we look at actual votes, the DA had 5,896 votes in 2024, and they only got 1,629 votes this time. So yeah, like just given all these numbers and what happened, I'd love to get your reaction, Ronaldo. Like, how did it feel knowing that the Freedom Front Plus did so well in this by-election?
Yeah, I think it just shows that people are heartful of this. How can I put it? For too long now, people supported the Democratic Alliance because of great service delivery, you know, and you can't dispute it that where the DA governs, they govern better than the ANC. But that's also a very low bar to set, you know. I mean, anybody can govern better than the ANC, but a lot of people have not witnessed it, you know, and rightfully, you know, the perception that only the DA can govern well. I mean, I can understand why that has been created, because they run an entire province in the Western Cape. So I can't fault the DA for good service delivery. And a lot of people are craving that, you know, but as with human nature, you know, the first thing you want is for things to work. And then when things work, then that's not good enough anymore. Then you want the next thing and the next thing. And the problem with the DA is that next thing is they haven't figured that out yet. Because if you look at the Western Cape, look at the rates and taxes that people in DA suburbs have to pay, and then what they have to pretty much pay for, because it's a case of the people in the middle class suburbs and up have to pretty much subsidize the people from the Eastern Cape that's moving to the Western Cape. So a lot of people that are living in DA wards that are being serviced well, you know, no potholes, the street lights are working, all of those, what they are now complaining about is the fact that they can't afford to live in those suburbs anymore because the DA is just completely pricing them out of the market. So what I want to go back to is the fact that anybody can govern well if they just implement the legislation of this country. And that counts for the Freedom Front Plus. It counts for other political parties that want to put the people of this country first. And people are getting heartful because, yes, the DA provides services, but then they also want to implement terrible policies like gender neutral bathrooms in the Western Cape. You know, they want to open up areas. Like, I mean, just one stupid example, right? When I was in Cape Town in the city center, most of the little zebra crossings that I crossed was painted in the LGBTQI plus flag, and I don't have a problem with the LGBTQI plus community. I might have a problem with the T in the LGBTQI plus, but that is because of their viewpoints that they want to force on people. And then if you have a counter, then you are a bigot,
don't deny the
transphobe. Yeah. It's like men can be women, women can be men. Children must be allowed to transition whenever they feel, you know. Like, I mean, I remember as a child seeing my mom putting on high heel shoes, and I was like, oh, that looks fun. Let me put it on. Now, my mom could have interpreted that as, oh, okay, actually Renaldo, you know, likes to dress as a woman. And before you know it, you know, maybe because of pressure and then hormonal treatment, I would have been something completely different today. So it's very dangerous. And I know that we are going far, but I just want to bring it all back. not everybody wants that type of things shoved in their face. People don't have a problem with it, but don't shove it in your face. Like imagine if I had now had to ask, okay, can we put zebra crossings across Western Cape, but then on every little bar put straight, straight, straight. You know, I mean, that would annoy people. So in the same way, you know,
Yeah.
don't force everything down my throat. It's a simple aspect of it. But all right, to bring it all back, yes, I'm very happy with what the Freedom Front Plus is doing and how much support they are getting. And I can see behind the scenes how many people are signing up to become members for the Freedom Front Plus. And I can tell you one thing, even during the 2019 bump, you know, when the DA made that massive mistake of Swise de Reineke, we are seeing people join the organization at a far higher rate than what they did during that saga. And we all know that during that saga, the DA conceded about 2 to 3% of their national vote to the Freedom Front Plus. So if you just have to
Sure.
go based on that number with how many people signed up, with now how many people are signing up, they in for a hiding. But yeah, so happy with the Freedom Front Plus. Very happy with Corne Mulder's leadership because that is also something that played a very important role for me deciding to join the Freedom Front Plus. There's nothing wrong with Dr. Pieter Groenewald. He is phenomenal at administration. But I just think that the Freedom Front Plus needed to, you know, get voters excited, you know, to tell them, you know, this is actually who we are. And Dr. Corne
Yeah.
Mulder does that really, really well. And I think that the Freedom Front Plus is got like a type of a new varnish on it. You know, it's shining again, and people can see what it stands for. And also, I think the world is just gat full of woke leftists, and they are gat full of socialists and communists, specifically in South Africa. And people are looking at conservatism and going, okay, well, you know, that doesn't look too bad because 85% of this population in South Africa are Christians. And in order to be a Christian, you need to be conservative to some extent. So it's just to convince people that the Freedom Front Plus is not this party that wants to bring back apartheid or, you know, or only want to govern for Afrikaners or white people. That's not the case. It's not the case. So, yeah, to bring it back to the by-election, expect a lot more of that. And especially in the 2026 municipal elections, there's going to be a massive upswing for the Freedom Front Plus. And I'm very excited because I think that conservatism in South Africa is the answer. And we can delve into that a little bit later as to why I say that. But I think people are just heartful of, you know, I think the ideology and the frustration that people have with ideologies far outweigh good service delivery at this point in time. And that is also why you see
Yeah.
that the DA is bleeding a lot more support in the Western Cape than in other parts of this country. That tells you something. Why would people in the Western Cape that is getting good service delivery and getting great services move away from the DA? So people need to look into that, especially if they don't live in the Western Cape, and they need to ask why. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
Well, I've
Well, their
explained
wallets
why
are being
previously.
strangled as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think it's good to, you know, obviously praise the DA for where they've done well. But I
Mm.
also want to say something that I know people are going to lose their minds over, but hey, I always do.
Who cares?
But it's this: all the things that the DA have done well, generally, they're not difficult things to achieve. And I know people are
Exactly.
going to lose their minds. Oh my God, but look how they've turned around Cape Town and Western Cape and what. So the reason I say that is because a lot of the time we look at things within a South African lens and we look at, for example, ANC versus DA, right? But
Mm.
now, what we also need to remember is that certain people have had the privilege of traveling to different parts of the world, myself included. And something that I've noticed in other places is that these issues of service delivery don't even show up on their politics. Because
Mm.
ultimately, no matter which party is in charge, potholes get filled, the lights stay on, you don't have all these water shortages, you know, like simple things, you know, like traffic lights. Why are robots always out and then they're back and then they're out and then they're back again? That doesn't happen in other places. Like other people who come here, they look at all of this and they're like, what is going on? You know,
Mm.
and kind of back to what you said, you know, people need to implement the law, of course, but I think it just comes down to care. if a party such as the Freedom Front Plus, or just as examples, like the Patriotic Alliance or the IFP or whoever else, if they simply just care enough and they say, listen, let's fill the potholes, let's fix the lights, it will get fixed. I mean, even the ANC, look how with the G20, they quickly fixed everything up. The ANC, in reality, if they cared and they weren't so busy plundering, they could actually fix a lot of the service delivery issues. Now, I'm not saying that they're good nationally. Obviously, we know the ideology is toxic. But I just think that this argument of vote for the DA for service delivery is a flawed argument, because in reality, pretty much anybody can provide good service delivery if they care. That's my view.
I will even expand on that in the sense that, a lot of people always say South Africa's got one of the greatest constitutions in the world. And to an extent, it's true for the most part. If you ignore that, the constitution says that there is something as fair discrimination, which is kind of weird. But other than that, the legislation that they propose and that we have in this country is some of the best in the world. So the Municipal Systems Act, the Municipal Structures Act gives you guidelines on how to govern. And the ultimate goal for any political party that is governing a municipality is to get what? Clean audits. Now, the guidelines and the bylaws and the laws of this country, the legislation, provides you with everything that you need to do. So even if I did not know anything about governing a metro, all I need to do is to go to the legislation, open a book, and let's argue for a second that I get awarded the mayoral committee chair for electricity and energy, right? So in the municipality, that is my role. Now, I've never ever fixed a light, a street light in my life. And now it's like, okay, what do I do? Well, where do I go? The first place is legislation. And then by following the legislation, you go, okay, you get a budget from national government and from provincial government, and you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to comply to get a clean audit. So spend your budget on what you are supposed to spend it on. So don't spend the electricity budget on sports, rec, arts, and culture. Use the budget to fix the lights, to put new lighting in areas. And the point that I'm leading to is that the DA is just implementing the legislation very well. And the Freedom Front Plus can do that too. It's not as if the DA's got this secret sauce that nobody else has. It's just that, unfortunately, the ANC clearly does not have that secret sauce. And also just added to that is the fact that they are terrible comparatively to any other political party that can govern.
Pretty much, exactly. Well, that's the whole point. And I like the fact that you brought up the legislation, because if we were to visualize this for a second, here is your legislation, your handbook that literally tells you what you need to do. You have the manual. Just follow the manual and implement. That's all. That's all you got to do. But obviously the ANC just doesn't care and are too busy with their own self-interests to do that. But something else that I just have to mention on this topic is the ideology situation. So there was always the argument, and look, I've never been so antagonistic towards the DA as I am now, and a big part of it is because of policy and because of policy direction. And I just need to tell people, you can't keep telling people to vote for the DA because, it's good service delivery, or, we're the biggest alternative next to the ANC, because ultimately, I, for one, I'm just using myself as an example, I am not a liberal. I've never been a liberal. I'm not going to vote for a liberal party. I've done it. Doesn't feel very good. But can people not get that through their heads? You can't expect somebody to vote for a party that doesn't align with the values. I mean, look, I'm by no means an extremist. There are a lot more extreme people than me. But in reality, if you had to make a political spectrum, right, and you take all the YouTubers, podcasters, journalists, whoever else, I mean, it's basically, look, the right is a little bit more quiet, although it's growing. But it's basically, if you want to look at everybody, it's me, Ramon, and Willem Petzer. And then everybody else a little bit further to the left.
Mm.
You can't expect me to vote for the DA or the ANC or Razem Zansi or whatever other party if they don't match my values. So yeah,
Mm.
it's just an irritating thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, but it seems like it's getting phased out.
I
So
can
I mean
explain
that's a
why.
good
I can
thing.
explain why that is happening if you want me to. I can get into that a little bit.
Sure.
Just
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I'm
just
happy to
scratch
hear.
the
Yeah.
surface. So the reason for that is considering where South Africa comes from. We come from apartheid. We come from a system where white people are seen as, everybody wanted apartheid. Everybody wanted to implement it. When the actual fact is that even a lot of white people didn't want apartheid, but they were threatened by the same government that used to do the things they did to black people. So just as black people weren't allowed after hours to go into white areas, the same applied to white people. Now, don't get me wrong, black people definitely got the shittiest deal out of everybody in South Africa. But to ignore
Sure.
the fact that white people was also pretty much controlled by this tyrant government, you weren't allowed to listen to specific music. Some movies were banned from coming into South Africa. So there was a wide scale, like, indoctrination that was taking place by the nationalist government. And that's also important for people to understand. The government that ruled during apartheid was not a conservative government. They were a nationalist government. That's important because a lot of people now say the Freedom Front Plus just wants to bring back apartheid because they are exactly the same as the National Party. No, there's a massive difference between conservatism and nationalism. And it's important for people to understand that. But the point that I'm leading to is that because of that insanity in our history, people were willing to kind of let some of the ideology go just in order to get service delivery, especially after the ANC governed for a long time and things were not improving. They were actually just getting
Which is
worse. So,
understandable.
yeah, and that is why, the DA in 1994 had, I believe, 1.7% of the vote. And then, because of infighting in other political parties, the DA just surged because, when they got a hold of a little bit of power, they made sure to show people that they could govern well. And then in the South African
Yeah.
context, people decided, okay, well, let's put ideology aside for a little bit because all we actually want is just for our lights to stay on, for us to not have potholes in our roads, and for our waste to be collected. Now we have reached that point of maturity in this country where, yes, to a large extent, service delivery is still not really, equal across the board. But people are waking up to the fact that, okay, but besides the service delivery, I don't really agree with, let's say, John Steenhuisen on this point, or I don't agree with Helen Ziller on that point, and I don't agree with the political party's stance on, we can argue about whatever, but, it's just people are now waking up to the fact that, but wait a second. I'm a white Christian male, and this political party is saying all these things that is against a white Christian male. So people are kind of waking up to that fact right now. And I can't think of a better example than when John Steenhuisen was in the White House. Now, you have to understand why that was so important and such a terrible move by John Steenhuisen. Because, like I said earlier, people put their ideologies aside for good service delivery. But a lot of people started just voting blindly for the DA because they thought, okay, the DA aligns with my values and principles. And then when everybody around South Africa tuned in to when Cyril Ramaphosa and his white agricultural minister was in the White House,
Sure.
what happened then was everybody expected John Steenhuisen to show Donald Trump the anger of all the people in this country that is hurtful of the ANC, that is annoyed with terrible service delivery and corruption and racism and et cetera, et cetera. And then instead, what John did was what the DA always would have done, is to try and be the middleman and say, the ANC is not that bad. We are dealing with the bad elements. And the reason that people responded the way they did is because their ideologies started coming out. Their ideology was like, but why are you not saying this? Why are you not saying that? Why are you not saying that? And it's almost like John Steenhuisen has awoken this, but wait, I actually need to vote for a political party because of my ideology, because otherwise this
Yeah.
person's not going to stand and represent me. So directly and indirectly, John Steenhuisen has caused this new wave of people waking up and going, perhaps the DA isn't for me. because they don't represent what I actually stand for, like you've rightfully said. So yes, I think we're waking up to that now, and it's only going to get worse. Added to that, of course, is the fact that this narrative that the DA has been driving for the last, I would say, 4 election cycles is don't waste your vote on a smaller party. Now, that used to work in the past because people were just wanting to avoid the EFF and the ANC getting, a coalition and then governing a 2/3 in this country.
Sure.
Those days are over because I don't believe for the next 50 to 100 years in this country that we will see a political party have an outright majority. So finally, South Africa is aligning itself with the rest of the world where when a party gets 25% of the vote, then they declare that they are the winners because they got the most votes. So coalition politics is the normal thing around the world. And finally, South Africa is catching up to that. And that is why,
Of course.
the DA had the opportunity to be the biggest party in this country. And they always said, make us the biggest party, but they could never get to that point. And we can talk about, the racial classification of this country or ideological differences. But it just boils down to the fact that the days of people voting for a party because they govern well is over. People want political parties to represent their interests and what they stand for. And I believe the Freedom Front Plus
Yeah.
is perfectly positioned for that because there isn't a real conservative party in this country that people were aware of until the Freedom Front Plus, especially under Dr. Corne Mulder, started coming out and just speaking to, this is actually who we are. It's just that mainstream media and other political parties wanted to consistently tell you that we are not. But in actual fact, we are. And the world is moving back to
Yeah.
conservatism because we can see what the woke left has given us.
No, I get that. And also something that I think was problematic for South Africa, but actually, yes, is good for the Freedom Front Plus, and it's coming at the right time, is that there's been this conservative vacuum where, like you rightfully explained, people went to the DA, and kudos to them for whatever they have been able to do. But yeah, it wasn't because they were like true believers. It was more just because these are my options and this is the best option that I have at the time. And yeah, it's
Mm.
actually interesting that you mention that the Freedom Front Plus is like the conservative party, because you've got so many parties in the country. But like if you had to like sit and you think to yourself, who's actually conservative? Like, okay, we can say that, like, for example, the Patriotic Alliance, I would say, is right wing, but they're not traditional conservatives in the same way. Some of
Yeah.
their policies seem a little more extreme. They obviously then have like a bit of a mixed track record because of often partnering with the ANC. The ACDP are conservative, but like, I don't know, that party just seems to be on the road to nowhere, and you like never hear about them anymore. So
Yeah, and I think it's, so here's the thing. The Freedom Front Plus is a Christian party, but that is focused on conservatism, where
yes,
the ACDP is first and foremost just a Christian party. And, we always say, politics and religion don't mix. And there's a real good reason for that, is because if you are just going to walk in and say, we are Christians, and then you already cut out, everybody else that might be from a different religion, or even atheists that might look and go, okay, well, we're not interested because all you want to do is implement Christianity into everything in society. Where the Freedom Front Plus is saying, listen, our values and principles are guided by Christianity, and we consider ourselves a Christian party, but we're also conservatives. We understand that, you're not necessarily going to be a Christian. You might be Jewish, but if you believe in the fundamentals of what our religion espouses, which is treat each other with respect, have, respect for the rule of law, treat your neighbor like you would want you to be treated, those type of things. A lot more people can resonate with that than, let's say,
sure.
the ACDP that is just opening the Bible and saying, this is what we are guided by. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, it's not just religion that people are after. They are after values and principles, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't know the full history and what goes on behind the scenes, but just from what I can see as an outsider, I don't feel like the ACDP really understands politics, which maybe sounds weird because they're a party that's existed for over 30 years. But the reason I say that is because whenever they seem to deal with people, firstly, they never seem to have any publicity, right? Like you even hear
Mm,
about parties like Borsa and Razem Zanti and them who are actually smaller, but you hear about them more. Like their PR
mm,
just isn't very good. And then also when
mm,
it came to like the formation of the GNU, do you remember how, for example, when the multi-party charter happened before the election, obviously everybody was like, we'll never work with the ANC, we'll never work with like obviously like EFF, and we don't know what the deal is with this MK, but we're not going to work with those guys. And then obviously the ACDP stuck by that and seemed to be the only party that really truly stuck by that. But I think here's the
mm,
problem. Firstly, I think that it was a mistake of the multi-party charter. I don't think that was a clever move. But
mm,
or actually, I don't really think the MPC was a great idea to begin with, but that's something we can get into. But the second thing is they missed a huge opportunity because something that the Freedom Front Plus and the Patriotic Alliance also really seemed to understand is that when you go into the GNU, you finally get a chance at governing and you can
mm,
finally show your worth. And that's
mm,
how these parties have been able to gain popularity because who are the big parties that really seem to be getting popular at the moment? It's the PA and the VF Plus, right?
mm.
And so I just think they just don't seem like a party that really understands politics. I don't know what's your view because I mean you've been in politics for the longest time.
Well, I mean, what you are saying is 100% true. And this is not me trying to have a dig at the ACDP, but just from a local, a local government perspective, when I was in council here, whenever the ACDP councillor would speak, then it would be Bible verses and, it would be a sermon. It would be a lecture on Christianity. I remember every single time, whenever he started speaking, then even the Christians in the council meeting went, "Oh, here we go," because the ACDP, it feels like a sermon. It feels like you are being lectured to. So the best way for me to describe the ACDP is imagine a pastor as a counselor. So every time
Oh
you're going to go and
wow,
meet with
okay.
your counselor, it's like you are meeting with your a pastor, and they want to convert you rather than just deal with the issues that you have. And this is not, like I said, this is not me having a dig at them. I respect them. They've got their voter base, and their voter base, unfortunately, will always remain the same size. You have to ask yourself, though, with the population of this country, with 85% of this population being Christians, why is the ACDP not the biggest party? Well, the answer is simple, is because most Christians don't actually want their religion overtly in politics because they understand that there's a separation between the religion aspect of it and the political aspect of it. So I think that the Freedom Front Plus has got that balance perfectly because everything that we do is guided by Christianity and our faith. However, we also understand, though, that in order to govern, you need to, compromise not on your values and principles, but you need to compromise to some extent, like joining the GNU, to show that you can govern well. Because otherwise, what mechanism is there to show the people that we can be an alternative to the ANC and we can be an alternative to the DA? And Dr. Peter Groenewald just clearly demonstrated that by, having one of the best 2 years in correctional services. That is why so many black people are waking up to the fact and going, well, Dr. Peter Groenewald actually looks like the person that we used to despise. And yet, this is the individual that is caring and looking after the people of this country by ensuring that criminals are treated as such criminals. And not just black
Sure.
criminals or colored criminals or white criminals. Every criminal is treated exactly the same way. And I think that is what a lot of people are warming up to. So, people can criticize as much as they want any political party that decided to join the GNU. But ultimately, if they are doing the work and they are using it to show people that they can govern and that they can do a great job, then why not? Especially if it's a national competency and we are moving towards a municipal election and we want to show people that it's not only the DA that can govern well, anybody that wants to apply the legislation can govern well.
Right. No, of course. And that's really the most effective game plan at this moment.
Mm,
Because if you are a smaller party, how else are you going to get your exposure? Like, that is the
mm,
perfect way to get your exposure. And listen, that's
mm,
why I don't criticize the DA when they said, no, we wanted to be in the GNU to make the difference. I'm like, okay, listen, obviously we have disagreements on certain things, but I'm like, okay, I understand. Like, I
mm.
understand you don't want to pull out the GNU because you obviously, from your perspective, feel that that is your chance to show people. But sure, that doesn't look like it's going down too well at the moment, Ronaldo,
But this is
because now
something
we've
that
got
has to be
this.
studied. I believe it's something that has to be studied because, yes, a lot of people say, oh, the DA is losing support because it's part of the GNU. But then my question is, but then why is the Freedom Front Plus gaining a lot of support? It's not necessarily that the DA is part of the GNU, it's that the DA fundamentally lied to their voters. That's the difference. Because remember, before the election, the DA said, there are three things we're going to fight against during this election: NHI, Bella, and the expropriation bill, right? That was, you can
Yeah.
go, if people don't believe me, go and type in DA election campaign 2024 and then read
Yeah,
through
but
their
also,
manifesto and you'll find all of those things. Sorry,
yeah,
just I'll conclude quickly, just to get to the
no
point
stress,
then.
no
So
stress.
they told the voters, these are the things that we will fight on your behalf. Then after the election, now they have a minister that has to implement Bella in, the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Garube. And the expropriation bill is now the Expropriation Act, and Dean McPherson has to implement the Expropriation Act. So two of the three bills that they said they were going to fight against is now not only law, but they have ministers that have to implement that. So it's not necessarily that the DA joined the GNU, it's that the DA joined the GNU and then they completely dropped all of their election promises that they told their voters that they were going to, fight for. That is the difference. It's not the GNU, it's the failure of keeping your promises. And that has made a lot of people very, very upset.
No, I understand that. And yeah, so like what I wanted to bring up is they spoke about doing those things like combating those three bills. But the problem is, if you think about what the function of the GNU is, that's not a function of the GNU. That's the function
Mm.
of the opposition. So like I
Yes.
was listening to a interview from Helen Ziller the other day. I think it was on 702. And basically when she was asked about, is it good that the DA's in the GNU? She's saying, well, look at our achievements. We fought against the VAT hike. And I'm like, okay, good. I'm happy you did that. Thank you. But at the same time, you could have done that as an opposition party. That's not a function of government,
Yeah.
fighting against the VAT hike. I'm just
Mm.
using that as an example because it just seems that a lot of the argument seems to be around actually the role of an opposition party. So it seems like even within the GNU, they're still in that opposition party frame of mind. And listen, I understand you have to sometimes be in opposition, right? Because the ANC can be destructive. They can try to take advantage. They still want to rule the place as if they're the only party in charge. So, of course, you do have to have a certain amount of resistance to them, and that I understand. But you can't tell me that every single achievement of yours or most of your achievements are things that are the function of an opposition party. And
Mm.
yeah, like I have to zone in on this because this is kind of the elephant in the room right now. Because as we've said it with a lot of the conversation, the DA keeps talking about governing well, but now we've got a situation in agriculture where the DA are not governing well, and that's this whole foot and mouth disease situation. And I mean, Ronaldo, you spoke with Theo de Jager yesterday, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken. So yeah, I'd actually like to just like hear your view on what's going on there and basically how it's going to come back on John Steenhuisen. Because I mean, Sakaliga, those guys beat the government left, right, and center in court. And you've
Mm.
got Sai involved and the Free State Agriculture as well. So yeah, like, yeah, what's your view on that? Like, do you reckon that this could basically be the end of Steenhuisen?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've heard internal whispers because I still got a lot of friends in the DA, and the conspiracy theory, if I can call it that, is that John Steenhuisen will not be re-elected as the leader of the DA. And I'm not going to mention the person's name, but somebody that previously
Okay.
said that they're not interested in running for the leader's position is going to actually run for the leader. Now, what people don't seem to know is there perhaps some backdoor deals, meaning John is willing to concede, but as long as he remains the Minister of Agriculture, then it's fine. Then he will, relinquish the leadership role. I don't know. But a lot of people are disgruntled with John Steenhuisen, both inside the party and outside the party. And then just quickly, before we get onto the agricultural thing, you made a very important point about the GNU and the opposition. The problem that the DA has now is that previously, when they were in opposition, taking the government to court was a great way of showing how different they are than the government. But now when you are in government and you take yourself to court, that just looks idiotic. If you take the Expropriation Act to court and you have the minister that has to implement that act, that looks idiotic. Why do you not remove your minister first and foremost and then take the act to court if you want to do that? But the DA has now gone from, being the opposition and taking the government to court to taking themselves to court. And it just looks stupid. But to get back to the whole John Steenhuisen thing, I mean, yeah, he's in massive trouble. He won't make it back as the leader of the DA. And then just with regards to this foot and mouth disease outbreak that's taking place, Theo de Jager made it quite clear that, listen, this is not John Steenhuisen that caused foot and mouth. This has been going on since 2019, and then every year it's just gotten progressively worse. The issue that most people in the agricultural sector has with John right now is his lack of urgency in dealing with this, because as Theo said, there are a lot of farmers that's going under because they either can't sell their product, because of restrictions, or there are many other things that are taking place that John and his department could be doing, but isn't doing. An example of this, of course, now is this pending court case, because by the end of business today, Friday, the 30th of January, he is supposed to answer Sakeliga, Sai and Vrystaat Landbou with questions that they have on whether they can, vaccinate their own herd and not wait on the government. But then in typical fashion, there was a video that did the rounds yesterday of this, not sure if it's a journalist or just the PR team for the government, that walked past him and then said, are you going to respond? What do you think? And then he said something along the lines of, well, if they want to delay it by a month, he did that. And it's just like, that is a minister that isn't connected with the people in the sector that he's representing. That is a minister that's on his own, looking at everybody else and saying, you are all wrong and I'm right. The irony, of course, is that John didn't clean house when he stepped in as the minister. So every official that allowed this disaster to get to the point where it is now is still guiding him, is still advising him on what he needs to do. But yet now, in the same breath, the one individual that I kind of could have resonated with in that department would have been Roman Cabernac, because he would not have taken any shit. And then that was the only person that John Steenhuisen got rid of. This is like a
satisfy
terrible
the media.
Yeah, it's such a terrible movie, but it's like a accident. You see that it's coming, and you need to look away, but you just keep on watching because you can't believe what you're actually seeing. And this is exactly what's happening with John Steenhuisen in that role and with the foot and mouth outbreak. Because, like you rightfully said, the DA is just known as governing well, and, trust the DA. If you've got a DA person in there, you don't even have to worry about it. It'll be looked after. And now we've got the worst animal disaster on record in South Africa's history, and that under the watch of John Steenhuisen. And like I said, it's not all his fault, but the last year and a half, year and 8 months, that is his responsibility, and he has failed the farmers and he's failed the agricultural sector. And then instead of humbling himself, he gets cocky and says like, well, if they want to delay the vaccinations by a month, then, it's almost like the ball's in their court. Well, in actual
But they're
fact,
not
these
even
farmers are
delaying.
desperate. Yeah, exactly.
They're actually accelerating because they're saying, let's do it privately. Give the people the power to do what they need to do to save their cattle. But no. So it's just he's lying. I'm so sick of
Mm,
people saying misinformation. No, it's just a straight up lie.
mm. And you know what also gets to me out of all of this is the fact that the DA is supposed to be the party that fights against the state owning everything and the state doing everything. Yes, just this is another White House moment that John Steenhuisen failed on, because when he had
Yeah.
the opportunity in the White House to tell the world superpower what the ANC has been doing for the last 31 years, he didn't do that. Yeah, John Steenhuisen has an opportunity to take, because for those of you that don't know, foot and mouth disease is a state controlled disease, meaning the state decides how farmers do this. They can't take the initiative on their own, which is absolutely absurd in a democratic country. Yeah, John has
Yeah.
a great opportunity to use what Sakeliga and Sai and Vrystaat Landbou is giving him on a silver platter, saying, take this to court because you can help us change this terrible policy that the government, is in control of, which the DA for the last 20 years have told us they want to dismantle, state monopoly and control. But now he's got a golden opportunity to do that. And instead of, saying, yes, okay, we concede as a department, you guys can do it. Instead of doing that, he is fighting the very people that he is supposed to represent and fight for. So this is like the second White House incident. And yeah, this is the end of John Steenhuisen, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, unfortunately.
Of course. Like I see it the same way. And I don't want to look, I never celebrate people's failures. That's not what I do.
Mm,
But I do want to remind people to a large extent that you and I have discussed this, and people were so angry when we first mentioned it. And I mean, people lashed out at me, especially on my channel. Like, you cannot believe when I said John Steenhuisen is not the guy. People were saying I'm an ANC apologist. I'm against the DA. I'm like, they came up with all kinds of silly theories, and you don't appreciate the DA. Yeah, I don't appreciate the DA. Well done on figuring that one out. But basically,
mm,
we already were calling the stuff out when it wasn't popular to do so. And we discussed
mm,
it. Well, I especially discussed it about the credit card fiasco. I've said it about his record as DA leader, how the DA's only been losing votes. I understand they gained percentage, but that's because of low voter turnout of other parties. They lost over about 115,000 votes or something in the last election. They lost in the municipal election in 2021. This was all under him. And so, yeah, I think if the DA is interested in saving itself as a party at all, get this guy out.
mm.
Like, there's no option.
The weirdest part out of all of this is that I actually think that John is a decent guy. I mean, when he was the chief whip of the DA, in Parliament. Remember, like, you always used to see those viral clips of John Steenhuisen, clapping back at Jacob Zuma or clapping back at Julius Malema, and he would, like, say something like a snide remark, and everybody would share it far and wide. And that is actually the
Yeah.
type of person that John is. He's a guy's guy, believe it or not. He's a very cool guy. Walks in, messes around, like one of the guys. But like I said, and the timing was terrible, because when the DA kicked me out, that's also when the DA just started going completely downhill. So I can understand when people go, oh, Renaldo, you're a bitter ex, because for 13 or 12 or 13 years, you were praising the DA. And now since you've left, now suddenly the DA is the worst thing under the sun. And to me, it's just like, well, I'm sorry, the timing is bad. You're right. But everybody can see that there's a clear difference between the DA pre 2024 and after the 2024 election. And at first it was just me, because, I knew the inner workings of the party, and I could see all of these things coming. And now, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but a lot less people are calling me a bitter ex now, because all of the things that I
Yeah.
predicted was going to happen, is playing out right now. So, and I mean, I don't want to pat on the back. I do believe that it's a sad thing to see the once great DA that actually, were a fantastic opposition party is now pretty much just being swallowed in by the ANC. And that's why so many memes are coming out with the DANC, like they call Dank,
Yeah.
or ANC Light. And I feel bad for a lot of people in the DA because a lot of my friends are still within the organization, and they also just look and go, we don't really know what's happening. And when this is true, when Helen Zille starts going quiet. When last have you heard from Helen Zille? When last has Helen Zille spoken out about something that's going on in the party? And remember, I will take everybody back to Musi Maimane as the leader. That's also when Helen Zille got really, really quiet. And Helen is really, really quiet now. It also just shows the state of the DA when one of your most prominent people and one of the most prominent people in the history of South Africa has to stand for a mayor position in this country after they've previously been a mayor, the premier, and the leader of a political party. For them now to be a mayor in Johannesburg, come on. I don't know who you're trying to fool, but we all know that it's because the DA has lost so much credibility that they have to kind of bring people back that want to actually retire to come and save the party, which is also, once again, highly ironic because when I was part of the party, you were told nobody's bigger than the party. Nobody's bigger than the party. You're not allowed to build a brand out the party. That is why the party was so against me and my YouTube channel. But now they are relying on, these individuals, these people that have built a brand outside of the party to come and save the DA. And that's simply not going to work out.
But it's only Zille. Like who else except for Helen Zille has a brand?
Well, that's
really?
I think that's a great discussion to have. And listen, I understand that this stream probably comes across as like a lot of, anti-DA bashing. But I think that what you and I are actually trying to get to is what's going on. What is the underlying cause of this sudden drop in support and also with the DA itself? Like, why is the DA not doing what we all know the DA is capable of, but they're not doing? And I think all of this boils down to what I said when my membership got terminated. There's this woke leftist element that has captured the Democratic Alliance at the highest level, at the federal executive level. And the reason I know this is because a lot of people told me within the party that, an example of this is Helen Zille came out and said that the federal executive unanimously decided to terminate my membership. That's a blatant lie. They got it with one vote. They got my termination with one person voting more in favor of removing me than people that said that I should have remained. And ultimately, it just boils down to they are captured by people that believe that anything to the right is bad, anything to the right is evil. And the reason for that is because if you go and look back at who the DA has welcomed into their organization, there's a lot of EFF councillors, members, a lot of ANC former councillors and members that has just been welcomed into the DA with open arms. There's this great example in Cape Town of an active EFF councillor the one day moving to the DA and then the next day becoming a DA councillor. Now, that is like a Jewish person in less than 12 hours deciding to completely drop all of their Jewishness and suddenly becoming a full-hearted Christian. Like, would you trust that person? Would you believe that person? Would you think that maybe that person is not going to come into, your Christian movement and try and perhaps influence a little bit of, the Jewish aspect of their beliefs? And look, I can use any other example. I just use Jewishness and Christian because you're a Jew and I'm a Christian. It's like nothing. I'm not anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
I've been accused of a lot of other things. I promise you I'm not.
No, but
I'm with Israel.
Makes sense
I'm with
also
Israel.
Because no, that I know. I totally get you. No offense taken. No, but you make a good point. That's obvious. Like, you can't just do that sudden switch at the end. And just on what you're saying about Helen Zille, it actually quite upsets me to see what's going on. People might not believe me, but it does, because look, Helen Ziller and I do not share a worldview. I do not
Mm,
agree with Helen Ziller's ideology on many aspects. There are some where I
mm.
do agree, but many where I don't. But I've always respected Helen Ziller. I've admired her. I've even voted for her in the past. And I just think that this is so tragic, Ronaldo, because she was voted the world's best mayor. She won the award for it. She did a great job in Cape Town, great job as the Western Cape Premier, leader of the party, led them to their best ever election result. And now this should be like near the end of her political career, right? And now at the end, she's in the worst possible position. She's now having to run as a mayor, and everybody, when she first announced, thought, geez, she's going to crush it. Now I'm not so sure. Now I'm actually not so sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very sad to see because I mean, nobody, and listen, you can feel however you want to feel about Helen, but there's no disputing that she has dedicated her life to politics and the improvement of South Africa. Like, I mean, ultimately, Helen Ziller was the federal executive chairperson that terminated my membership. So I should have a massive grudge against her. And I, to an extent, don't. I feel it's so weird, and I don't want it to come across as me trying to be condescending. But I feel sorry for Helen because imagine committing your entire life to improving South Africa to make it better, and then to get to that high where you become the official opposition, where you govern a province, and you think, okay, this is eventually going to take over South Africa, and the ANC will just be a footnote in history, and then to see your own party crumble like this. Um, and a lot of people say, well, it hasn't happened yet. Well, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Um, and the fact, the proof is in the pudding. She has to stand for the mayor of Johannesburg, which is not, I think, something that she wanted to do in her twilight years. She would have probably wanted to do something along the lines of what Tony Leon is doing now. That is more of like an advisor role to the party, and every now
Yes.
and then, giving an opinion on what has been decided here, what has been decided there. And now that she has to pretty much return to full-time politics as a mayoral candidate, it just shows you what trouble the DA truly is in. But yeah, added to that, um, the one thing I want to say, because I want to bring the Freedom Front Plus in here because of something that happened recently. When I said that the DA wants to be everything for everybody, you have to understand that that is a mammoth task because you're not trying to be a conservative to some aspects and a liberal in other aspects. We are a very, very diverse nation. We have 12 official languages in this country. We have people with all types of worldviews. And I think the biggest downfall for the DA was that they were just welcoming everybody in, thinking that everybody was going to agree to their ideology. And as we know, unfortunately, leftist ideology is always open to just becoming more and more leftist. And before they realize it, they are actually communist and socialist. And the big difference between the DA and the Freedom Front Plus, you can just see it by when Corne Mulder had a public meeting. And some of the questions were, you're getting a lot more support from black people and from people that you don't think would usually vote for the Freedom Front Plus. And then Corne responded and said, yes, and we welcome these individuals, but just understand that you joined this party knowing who and what we are. So, and he might not have said it exactly the way that I'm saying it, but in essence, what he said is that you are joining the Freedom Front Plus knowing that we are a conservative Christian party. You're not going to change us. If you join us, that means you believe in what we stand for. And then he
Of
got a lot
course.
of, mainstream media and people that tried to take him out of context saying, oh, the Freedom Front Plus is saying that they're not for black people. I'm sorry, the last time I checked, the overwhelming majority of black people are Christians. And also the vast majority of black people are conservative. Ask Zulus how they feel about family values. Ask, Xhosa people how they feel about family values. Ultimately, it just boils down to the fact that the difference between the DA and the Freedom Front Plus is that the DA is willing to change their ideology to an extent to accommodate more people. And the Freedom Front Plus is saying, you join the political party doesn't join you and your worldviews, ultimately.
For sure, Ronaldo. And look, I think just on that note, it seems like a pretty exciting time for the Freedom Front Plus because I just view that when the mainstream media starts to panic and, for example, taking Corne Mulder out of context and having all this weird rhetoric going around and slamming the party, that's the sign that they are worried. That's a
Mm.
sign that they know that something's happening and this is a threat to them and their agenda. So yeah, if I were you or anyone else in the Freedom Front Plus, I would pretty much take it as a compliment because it means you're obviously making inroads. But yeah, Ronaldo,
Yeah.
thanks so much for joining me. Oh yeah, sorry, man. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I want to add to that. You know, for the longest period of time, the Freedom Front Plus was seen as this right wing party because that's how other political parties framed it, and that's how the media framed
Mm.
it. Now, to the viewers watching, I'll just ask you 4 questions, and it's the 4 F's. You know, I dumb it down so that people can understand it. Not only because I think people are dumb, but because unfortunately in politics, you know, you have to bring it down to its easiest form. The question I have is, do you believe in family values? If the answer is yes, guess what? You're conservative. Do you believe in your freedoms that you enjoy? Well, guess what? You're conservative. Do you have some aspect of faith, or do you believe that values and principles that Christianity has given us is important in society? If the answer is yes, then guess what? You're a conservative. And lastly, do you believe in the flag? You know, so do you love this country? Do you think that we live in a beautiful country? Do you see the potential of this country? If your answer is yes, then guess what? You're conservative. So it's faith, flag, family, and freedoms. Those 4 F's. If you believe in that, then you are a Freedom Front Plus voter, or you could be a potential Freedom Front Plus voter, because that is the things that we want to implement in this country. And there's a large misconception of, you know, when the Freedom Front Plus talks about protecting minority rights, that's Afrikaners, that is white English speakers, that's colored people, that's Indian people, but also, very importantly, that is black cultural minorities. You know, like if you look at Zulu and Xhosa, those are your 2 big ones. But then there are black cultures underneath, you know, the black identity in this country that can easily be represented by the Freedom Front Plus, because we want to represent all minority rights, cultural minorities included in that. And that, I think that is why so many black people are starting to look at the Freedom Front Plus and going, that actually doesn't look too bad. So, yeah, ultimately, that is what we stand for.
All right. Well, exciting times to come. Ronaldo, thanks so much for joining me again. It's good to catch up with you.
And it's great to always be here. You have a great show, and long may it grow and continue, because like I said, and what I always say when I see you on my live streams, you know, I give a version of the news that is a little bit of entertainment and a little bit of dumbed down, so that, you know, people can just find it fascinating. And you giving it, you give it a deep analysis. You know, you go deep into things, and that is very needed in this country, especially for people to educate themselves on how a political system works and what is really behind the curtain. So your channel, and you add a tremendous amount of value specifically to South Africa and the political conversation that we're having. So thank you, Matthew. It's greatly appreciated, and please keep it up.
Well, thank you. I mean, getting the compliment from you of all people is greatly appreciated. So thank you, Ronaldo.
What, the
Especially
former
one of
member
the
of parliament
first.
racist?
Anybody who actually does their research knows that it's all nonsense. So yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't pay any attention to those ridiculous people.
Oh yeah, no, I
But
don't.
yeah, good to have the compliments coming in from one of the first ever South African YouTubers I ever subscribed to and took an interest
Wow.
in. So that's always
Well,
good.
thank you.
And yeah, anybody who's watching this, if you haven't subscribed to Renaldo, I don't know where you're living, but you've got to subscribe. Otherwise, you're missing out. And just remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. But yeah, that's all for me and Renaldo this time. And looking forward to catching up with you soon again, Renaldo. And yeah, until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.